So we are reading The Family Under the Bridge, and we're in the middle of chapter 8. And here is a picture of the gypsy village and the house on wheels. It must be because he cut down the Christmas tree, said Paul. Remember, the police are after, what's his name? They're after Nicky. They want to put him in the army, wailed an old woman. I know that is it. They put my Theodore in the army, and he was never the same again. He gave up the wandering life and settled down in a house. All the gypsies were upset. Without another word to each other, they began packing up their belongings and tearing down their tents. Petro grumbled when they started on his, but when he learned the reason, he awakened as if a pitcher of ice water had been thrown in his face. We can't leave until the rest of the men come home from the restaurant, said Morelli. She went to the opening and peered down the street. The Calquette children watched the activity with growing alarm. They had never seen the gypsies work so hard and so fast. You're going to leave? Cried Susie. We always leave if the police visit us, said Tinka. If we didn't, someone might be put in jail. Morelli appealed to Armand. Why don't you come with us? You and the Calquettes. The skies are blue in Provence now, and the flowers are blooming. I'll go with you, cried Paul with shining eyes. I want to be a gypsy. No, no, cried Susie, grabbing his arm. We can't go off with the gypsies. We have to stay with Mama. We're her children. Paul tore loose from her grasp. I'm sick of being wet and cold, he said. If I was a big man, I'd go to work and make enough money to put us in a house. Susie grabbed him again and angrily shook him. You're always bragging about what you'd do if you were a big man, she retorted. You better begin thinking what you should do while you're a little boy. I'm going with the gypsies, repeated Paul, trying to pull away. Oh, Armand, implored Susie, please don't let him go. Armand gently put his hand on Paul's shoulder. You can't go with them, boy, he said. You've got to stay here with your family. Why can't I go? Asked Paul rebelliously. Why do I have to stay here? Armand crossed his arms and stared down at the red-headed boy. You can't go because you've got red hair, he said. That's why. Why does that matter? Asked Paul. It matters plenty, answered Armand. How far do you think the gypsies would get with a red-headed child? People would think they had kidnapped you. The police would put you in a strange home and the gypsies in jail. A sudden thought darkened Susie's blue eyes. We won't have any place to stay now, she said. Do you think the new house will be ready for us in time, Armand? Armand lowered his head in shame. If we could move there soon, said Paul. I wouldn't want to go with the gypsies. I'd stay and help us move in. Will you take us to look at it? Susie begged at the hobo. Then we can see if it's almost finished. Remember, Armand had said they were building a house.
But they really weren't.
But they're really not. Armand put his head between his hands. There won't be any new house for you, he confessed. It was all a mistake. It turned out the builders don't want children and dogs in it. You know how it is with a brand new place. They want to keep it looking that way. No house for us, cried Susie, with a catch in her voice. Nothing? Armand couldn't look in her eyes. Paul darted away to the gypsies. When the rest of the men returned, they were startled to hear about the policeman's unexpected visit. Nicky was upset by more than the call. And just at this unfortunate time, when I've lost my wallet with all my week's earnings in it, he cried. I know I lost it at the Cafe of the Laughing Frog, and the owner said he would return it to me if he found it. Humph, grunted Armand. Who would return a wallet full of money? Some people collect the stuff. Petro tried to help. We can use what I have in my pocket, he offered. Then we will have to work along the way. I'm really wide awake now. The little house on wheels was hooked to the back of one of the automobiles. The gypsies and their dogs piled over the seats. Jojo whined to go too because he had enjoyed his ride so much on Christmas Eve. We left one of the tents for all of you, cried Nicky. There's almost another week due us on the yard, Morelli added. We've been paying rent to the wreckers. The automobiles coughed and sputtered. Then they slowly ground through the sand toward the opening. The gypsies waved goodbye. Tinka threw Susie a kiss. Jojo tried to follow the cars, but Armand called him back. The little house on wheels, which had been a home for Susie and her family, had disappeared into the street. There was nothing left to show that the gypsies had ever even lived in this yard. Nothing but a weather-beaten tent and the dead ashes of their fires. Then those left behind noticed something else missing from the yard. There was no Paul. He was gone. He left with them, wailed Susie. Paul went off with the gypsies. Evelyn began to howl. I want Paul, she wept. I want my brother. Oh, la la, groaned Armand, and there is still Madame to face. He silently set to work getting a cold lunch for the children. The gypsies had left some cheese and bread in the tent, but nobody seemed hungry, not even Jojo. Armand felt that he was to blame for it all. He sat down with his back against the fence and thought. Oh, it was all his fault. He had brought the children to the gypsies in the first place, but he had only tried to help them. That's what he got for ever having anything to do with starlings. Now he was caught in the same net with them. But was he? No. He could get up and go. He could push his buggy right through that opening in the fence and never come back. At that thought, he rose to his feet and looked toward the opening. To his amazement, he saw a forlorn little figure come through it. Paul, he shouted. Is it really you, Paul? The boy nodded sadly as if he wished it were somebody else. You left the gypsies and came back to us because we're your family, cried Susie joyously. I didn't go away with the gypsies, said the boy. You're always saying I should stop bragging about what I'll do when I'm big and do something now. So I went down to the halls and tried to get a job. Tried to get a job at the halls? Asked Armand with fresh surprise. That funny tramp you knew said they needed pushers, Paul reminded him. You're too little to work, said Susie. You have to be big like Armand. The hobo uneasily tugged at his whiskers. Paul looked at the copper toes on his shoes. That's what all the men said, he continued. They laughed at me. They showed me a big cart full of boxes and told me that if I could push it, I could have a job. Paul wiped his eyes with his knuckles. I pushed and I pushed, but I couldn't even budge it. Then they all laughed at me again. Armand was indignant. The nerve of them, he exclaimed. I'll go down there tomorrow morning and hang them all up on those hooks. But he didn't finish his threats. He was frightened to see the policemen coming in again. Oh, this must have something to do with Paul's visit to the halls. Perhaps they had got wind of those vagabond children, and the policemen were coming to take them away. Oh, they should have gone with the gypsies. But the policeman looked bewildered. Weren't there gypsies in this yard, he asked. They have to leave suddenly, said Armand. Received word of a sick relative in Normandy. And I suppose the one named Nicky left with them, asked the police. Of course, said Armand. It was his relative who was sick. The policeman pursed his lips and shook his head. Too bad, he said. A wallet lost by him was found under a table at the cafe of the Laughing Frog today. He pulled a new leather wallet from a pocket under his cape, and in it is a lucky ticket that won yesterday's lottery. Too bad, it's a shame. Armand's eyes brightened. I'll keep the wallet for him, he said. The policeman eyed him suspiciously. His sharp eyes saw Armand's unkempt whiskers and ragged tramp clothes. He tucked the wallet under his cape again. I can't deliver it to anyone but the rightful owner, he said. Then he turned and walked away, shaking his head and muttered, Too bad, too bad. Armand exploded with a roar. Too bad indeed, he roared. I call it a tragedy to lose that nice new wallet. And all that money, said Susie. And the lucky ticket, said Paul. Pooh, said Armand. What would Nicky do with so much money? It might ruin his character. But anybody would hate to lose that wallet. It's just the right size for carrying around the coins a man needs. What will we do now? Asked Susie. We don't have any place to live after this week. Mama will cry, said Evelyn solemnly. I wish I could have moved that cart, said Paul. I tried so hard. A great feeling of shame came over Armand at the boy's words. The children's eyes returned to him with that needful look. He cleared his throat. Everything is going to turn out all right, he reassured them. I'm going to get a steady job. Your mama and I ought to make enough between us to rent that room in Glitchy for you nestlings. Then, frightened by his own brave words, he slumped to the ground and leaned back weakly against the wall. And tomorrow we will finish with chapter 9.